Hey, good morning, everyone. So, as you look at the slide on your screen, you see an image of a goldfish jumping out of a small bowl into a large one. The question that you want to ask yourself is, what in the world does a goldfish jumping out of a small bowl into a large one have to do with your corporate culture? Well, if you know the science behind a goldfish, you'd recognize that a goldfish in a lake becomes a koi fish that can be as big as your leg, but a goldfish in a bowl will only eat enough to grow to the size of the container or the environment around it. Yet if you take that same fish and put it in a large container, it will grow to the size of the container, just exactly like the culture of your company. It's invisible. You don't see it. You can't recognize it. The goldfish doesn't know the glass is there until they bump into it, just like your people bump into it on a regular basis. Yet, if you don't pay attention to it and constantly focus on expanding it to line up with the season that you're in, the purpose of your customers and your clients, the direction that you want to head in, it can really slow you down. So this morning, we're going to talk about 4 critical things. First of all, we're going to define for you what an excellent culture really is and how it affects your business in this exciting new reality. And you notice that I didn't say new normal. I said new reality. If you understand the science of psycholinguistics, the way that words trigger images in people's minds, like the word virus or the word pandemic, those words immediately trigger drama in people's mind. The word normal triggers, well, what was it like in the past? And if your firm, if your people are sitting around and waiting for things to go back to normal, good luck. You're going to wait. You're not only going to wait for a long time because so much has changed that there will never be another normal. We'll never be like we were in the past. Again, just think about it for a second. What's going to happen when all of the CFOs of the world crunch the numbers and figure out how much cost saving there is with people working virtually from home as opposed to in those big expensive office buildings? You've already seen Nordstrom's, announcing that they're shutting down permanently 16 stores in 9 states. You've seen the CEO of Twitter come online and announce that he's fine with everybody working from home from now on if they want to. So there's so much that has changed that will never go back to the way it was again. If your folks are sitting around waiting for the normal to happen or even talking about the new normal, all it's doing is slowing you down and keeping you from being all that you can be. Secondly, we're going to talk about what most business leaders believe about their culture that's destroying their effectiveness and crippling them in this season. Unfortunately, the word culture is the most misunderstood word in corporate America. The reason it's misunderstood is because while every leader, every CEO, every manager, every vice president talks about it all the time, nobody ever, and I've talked to literally thousands of leaders in all kinds of industries over many years and always asked the question, has anyone ever Googled or looked up the definition of corporate culture? To this date, I've had one person out of thousands raise their hand, and they just did it because they knew what was coming before we got there. So we're going to talk about what most leaders believe about their corporate culture that is literally destroying their effectiveness and crippling them in the season. Third, we're going to talk about the top 10 key core beliefs that define an excellent culture in the season of this new reality. You notice that I have banished that word normal. This isn't a new normal. It's a new reality. We're dealing with new realities that are changing so fast, nobody can keep up with them. The winds of change are not blowing. They are in our face at hurricane velocity. And if you haven't recognized that yet, your people certainly have. And then finally, we're going to talk about how your culture stacks up against the best of the best. We have data that defines in terms of these 10 key core beliefs, what are the best, most highest, most effective, excellent performing cultures in the world. And we're going to address those. We're going to talk about them. And then finally, we'll take some questions and respond to as many as we can during the time frame that we have allotted. Let's get started. So first of all, culture, as I said earlier, is the most misunderstood word in corporate America. Everyone talks about it, but no one's ever looked up the definition. What most business leaders believe about culture is that it's the environment in which an employee is placed in or a part of. It's the esoteric, touchy-feely, warm and fuzzy, impossible to measure, let alone manage, mysterious thing that's in our organization. It's kegers on Friday night. It's casual dress. It's, how we do, casual dress and make everybody feel comfortable. Or, it's getting everybody together so that we can collaborate, even though deep inside your folks may hate collaborating. Or they believe it's all about having happy, engaged employees. All these misnomers. In fact, there's literally thousands of them. And if you haven't looked it up, sit tight, because we did it for you, and we're going to talk about it this morning. We'll give you the cliff notes so you don't have to spend hours upon hours and days upon days and weeks upon weeks doing the research and studying the literature. So first of all, if your leaders or your employees today believe any of this before the virus, it's feely touchy, it's warm and fuzzy, it's this mysterious thing that makes happy, engaged employees. If they believe this before the virus, you are doomed to a future of happy, contented, warm and fuzzy mediocrity. And that was before the virus hit. Now, if any of you believe this, if your people believe this, you may very well be doomed to a future of extinction, because things are changing so fast that if we don't change first, we become victims rather than victors in moving this forward. Sound a little scary? Well, it can be, but you're here today so that it won't be scary for you. Let's talk about what corporate culture really is. If you Googled it, you're going to find two definitions. One from the U.S., the other from Western Europe. One definition is that's the shared values, attitudes, standards, and beliefs that characterize members of an organization and define its nature. Secondly, it's the beliefs and ideas that a company has and the way in which they affect how it does business and how its employees behave. Bottom line, it's the beliefs that your people and your leaders have that govern how they behave at work. If someone believes my boss is a jerk, I hate them, they're going to behave just the opposite of someone who believes I like and respect my boss, I enjoy working for them. And in fact, if you studied any of the Gallup data, the most significant impact on employee engagement is not anything other than bad bosses. Jim Clifton, the CEO at Gallup not long ago, noted these as the managers from hell. If you work from a manager from hell, then you're going to respond totally differently than if you work for a manager from heaven. So in essence, we've got these three circles. On one side, we've got the national culture. In this country, everybody comes from someplace else. So we've got national cultures and customs that are unique to every single one of our backgrounds that influence what we believe and how we behave. Then at home, the house on the bottom, we've all got family cultures that are about how we do things in our family. At the holidays, when everybody gets together, you see these cultural things come to pass, and there's always a collision based upon the different beliefs of different folks in different situations, scenarios. Then we go to work, and we've got a corporate culture at work. Yet in the center, each one of us has our own personal culture. What do we believe about our jobs, about our work, about our bosses, about our leaders, about how our family interacts with these, about the coronavirus, about working from home, about thousands, literally thousands of things that govern how we're going to think, how we're going to act, how we're going to communicate or not communicate, how we're going to behave, how we're going to respond to the engagement survey, governs all these things. So, the most important piece of research that was ever done on the subject of business culture was a study that was done at the Harvard Business School in the late 80s and the early 90s. And you might be thinking, what in the world does something that happened in the late 80s and early 90s have to do with what's going on today? Well, if you read the book, Corporate Culture and Performance, which you can still get, on Amazon, it's still available, you would know the answer, but sit tight. If you haven't read the book, we're going to give you the Cliff Notes. So in essence, these two professors at the Harvard Business School, John Cotter and James Heskett, decided that they were going to spend 11 years studying Wall Street firms, public companies, so that they could gather all the information, all the data, find out anything that was there. And then based upon what they learned, they wanted to answer the question, does the culture of a business have an impact on its financial performance? Well, the first thing they found out was something different than the question they were looking to answer. Again, 207 firms for 11 years. And most of these businesses that were in this study are still in business today, and we'll talk about a few, and we'll talk about the impact and effect of what they discovered. So the first thing they found out was that there were two distinctive types of cultures. They called them non-adaptive versus adaptive. You see the non-adaptive on your screen represented in lime green and the adaptive represented in blue. At the same time, there were two industrial organizational psychologists at the University of Illinois, Chicago, that were studying data from a behavioral perspective. Harvard was business perspective. And they found out pretty much the same thing, that there are two distinctive types of cultures. They called one defensive and the other constructive. Constructive correlates with adaptive, defensive with non-adaptive. And then later, they figured out that there were two subgroups in the defensive. There was passive defensive and aggressive defensive. And we've all heard those terms used frequently when talking about leadership in our culture and our business. But do we know what they mean? And do we know how they affect what we're doing? So in the study, they looked at revenue, which are your sales, employment, how many people did these firms hire over this 11-year period of time, shareholder value, how much was left at the end of the day for the owners of the firms, and then profitability. In essence, what they discovered was the non-adaptive or the defensive firms increased their revenue by 166% over a 10-year period. Now, you think 10% a year revenue growth or over 11 years, not bad. They hired 36% more people, so they were growing. They were adding more people. They didn't have unemployment in these non-adaptive cultures. They were growing on this 10% revenue. Their shareholder value, though, only went up 74% over 11 years. Not exactly where you want to have your IRA or 401k. And the reason for that 74% terrible return was their profitability was only 1% over 11 years. So somehow they took that 166%, 10% a year revenue growth in these defensive, non-adaptive cultures and spilled it so that they only got 1% of the bottom line that resulted in a measly 74% increase in the shareholder value of their owners. Conversely, the firms that were the adaptive cultures, they increased their revenue 682% or 4 times the amount of the defensive cultures. They hired 8 times more people, and their shareholder value was 12 times the shareholder value of the defensive cultures. Anyone want to guess what their profitability was? You think it was 20 times, 30 times, 50 times? You're wrong. 100 times, 200? You're wrong. It was 756 times the shareholder value / profitability that influenced the shareholder value compared to the defensive cultures. Now, many of the firms that were in this survey are still in business today. The non-adaptive retailer was Kmart. Anybody know what Kmart's doing today? Before the virus, merging with Sears to come out of bankruptcy, then taking Sears down. The adaptive culture was Walmart. Any idea what Walmart's doing today? Also Costco. Any idea what they're doing today compared to Kmart? The non-adaptive airline was Western Airlines, now Delta. Anyone follow what Delta did a few years ago? Well, they merged with Northwest to come out of bankruptcy, and thank God they're turning it around and have turned it around to an extent. The adaptive airline was, you guessed it, Southwest. So in essence, so many of these firms were in business. There was one firm, by the way, that was in the study, actually a couple, that you would know very well. One firm was so successful that their product became synonymous for the generic name of the product. Years ago, people didn't say, can I have a photocopy? They said, can you get me a Xerox? Anyone know what Xerox is doing today? They were in the non-adaptive cultures with a product that was so successful that it became synonymous with the whole industry. Years ago, I had the opportunity to sit next to an executive from Kodak on an airplane. Did you know, amazing what you learn on airplanes, did you know that Kodak also had a defensive culture, and their scientists invented digital photography, the photography that's on your phone today. Yet, once the invention was created, Kodak laid off 25,000 people to survive because they couldn't keep up with the speed of the market. Even though they owned the technology, when others got it and took over, they outpaced them significantly. Is culture important if you're looking to make a profit, to survive, to stay in business? Let me quote Jim Senegal, the original founder of Costco. What he told me years ago when we had the opportunity to serve them was, Steve, culture isn't everything, it's the only thing. Now, conversely, today, we've got a whole different set of business parameters and frameworks. Today's top firms are not just talented and engaged, they are fast, they are mobile, they are quick to change, they are virtual, they are highly innovative, totally team-oriented, hate losing, and love to win. But most of all, above all, they are relentlessly committed to excellence, regardless of external factors. These are the frameworks that make up a successful, impactful, winning culture today in today's times. And as a result, you've got a number of factors that are going on that influence whether you have this or you don't. The first one is the talent shift. It's no longer about the most talented individuals. It's now about the most effective team. And we see even in sports, example after example, where the most talented team loses because someone else has better teamwork or better team spirit or better team culture, if you will. It's no longer in leadership about top-down to participative, or no longer about top-down, but it's switched to participative, shifted to participative. Top-down command and control leadership stopped working 10 years ago, especially if you have millennials and Zs in your workforce. They don't respond. Well, let me take that back. They do respond to authoritative top-down leadership. They just respond negatively. They run, they duck, they hide, they smile and nod their head, tell you everything's great, but deep down inside it's not, and they say different things after the meeting than they do in the meeting, and different things on their private social media than they say at work. Then we've got the compensation shift. If you look at any of the studies, especially with millennials and Zs, we've got 30%, actually 33% of our workforce today in that segment, and they don't care about wages and benefits nearly as much as they do. Is this job aligned with my purpose in life? Is it something that I enjoy? Do I have a team that has my back? Do I work for a boss who I respect? Do they have principles and values that I believe and agree with? And there's countless studies that show that folks will go to work for less money and worse benefits just so they can be engaged and have fun and do what they love to do. Culture shift. It's no longer about engagement. It's about transformation. Engagement is a fruit. Culture is a root. You could have the most engaged people on the planet, everybody hugging each other, holding hands, singing Kumbaya, and go out of business. And everyone knows and has seen examples where that has happened. Now, most of all, today, we've got the coronavirus shift, where it's no longer just about these other four factors. It's about massive, aggressive, convulsive, never-ending, in-your-face, unpredictable change. The winds of change, not just blowing, but in our face at hurricane velocity. So how do you deal with all of this? Let's first look at understanding what culture is. Peter Drucker, the father of management, said that culture eats strategy for breakfast. In essence, the best analogy I can think of is the iceberg, where if you're in Glacier Bay and on a cruise and look out and somebody says, oh, look at the iceberg, they're not saying, look at what's real. They see the top 10% because that's what floats. The 90% below the surface is where the power really is. So in essence, We used to think, and most leaders used to think, that if we have a good mission statement, if we have God, mom, and apple pie in our corporate values, if we have a vision for where we want to go and where we want to be, if we have solid goals and objectives and great strategies, then we have a great culture. Well, the truth is, you could have all those things and have a horrible culture that's sinking your boat and not even know it, because what's going on below the surface is what's really driving the ship. It's the internal competition, the corporate politics, the attitudes, the old habits, the traditions, the beliefs, the perceptions, the fear of what's going to happen if social distancing doesn't work, what's going to happen if masks don't work, what's going to happen if we touch our face too much, what's going to happen when we ever go back to work. It's the folklore. You know how it is around here. You know how that boss is. You know what she's like. You know what he's like. It's the unwritten rules. The little green gremlin frozen in the iceberg, we call him the culture monster. The culture monster is basically the dark side of human nature. He's who we all are when we're at our worst, and he's all of these things that are hidden below the surface that we don't see. And in many cases, they're hidden so deeply that people don't even know what they believe because it's unconscious, it's subconscious. They don't recognize it, they don't see it, and if they don't know it, neither do you. And if they do know it, most generally, they're not going to tell their boss or even their colleagues, but they will tell the anonymous confidential survey, and that's how you find out in most cases where the real truth is. So let's see what you've learned. Pop quiz. Question number 1, true, false. Most leaders who believe that we have a pretty good culture around here, quote, have an excellent culture. Well, the answer is false. If you believe that, you could be in real terrible trouble. And we have data to prove time and time and time again that leaders who believe we have a pretty good culture around here are usually the ones who are resting on their laurels, not intentionally, but unintentionally, letting it be because they know everything's cool and look at our bottom line, we're doing well, and then something like the virus hits and everything changes overnight and they weren't expecting it. Second question, multiple choice. An excellent culture, meaning a high performance, a winning culture, is one where A, corporate values are well defined and posted everywhere. B, the working environment is warm, comfortable, and inviting. C, all employees can recite the corporate mission statement by heart. D, millennials love to work there. E, employee engagement scores are high. F, employees are loyal, happy, and trust each other. G, all of the above. H, none of the above. What do you think the answer is? Is it millennials love to work there? Is it employee engagement scores are high? Is it all of the above? Or is it none of the above, which is the correct answer? It's none of the above. You could have any one or all of those things and still have a defensive, non-adaptive culture that's taking you down. Now, let's talk about what really does matter and what an excellent culture really is. It all has to do with 10 essential key elements, 10 key core beliefs. What do your people believe about? And let me say that because the virus and the shutdown and the stay-at-home order has been such a huge, traumatic impact on people's lives, that there is no firm that all of these have not changed in just within the last few months. So you could have had a great culture before the virus hit, and now everybody's beliefs have changed because of that. Belief number 1. What do your people believe about change and innovation? Do they believe that change is something that you avoid and you resist, and it's hard and it's difficult and it's just grueling, challenging, painful work? Or do they believe that it's a wonderful opportunity and adventure to be more, do more, and get more? Do they run toward it or do they run away from it? If you don't know this, then you're in big trouble. They're in big trouble in this season. Secondly, what do they believe about accountability? Does accountability mean what they hear on the news? It's a bunch of heavy-handed leaders and bosses poking people in the chest, threatening them, holding them accountable? Or is it teammates raising their hands saying, can I be accountable for that? Guys, would you hold me accountable for that piece of the puzzle? Or is it anything in between? And accountability has taken on a whole new aspect during the virus. Is it bosses who believe that, gosh, everybody's working at home now, we can't expect them to do their best? Or employees who believe, thank God, now we got out from under that evil micromanager's eyeballs and we can really have fun at home rather than, do what we're expected to do. All these beliefs influence how your folks are performing, how they're responding to the virus. Third, what do they believe about their own importance to the team? Am I just a little cog in this huge, big machine, or am I an essential, valuable piece of this puzzle that's respected, liked, and appreciated by my teammates and my boss, or anything in between? Fourth, what do they believe about how problems and emergencies are handled? It's not my job. The boss needs to figure that out. Well, that's the government's job. Well, it's not about me. It's about them. That's their fault. These problems are happening. Or do they believe if there's a problem with a customer or client, it's my job to handle it as quickly as I can. And if I don't have the authority, immediately get to someone who does and do it. And I love to do it, or anything in between. What do they believe about efficiency and results? Is it just enough to get by? Or is it constantly raising the bar, doing all that we can to be all that we can be? What do they believe about leadership and leadership development? Is it, we got a lot of managers, but I'm not so sure how many real leaders we have? Or is we have great leadership, we develop it at all levels. Most of our leaders come from within, but a few come from outside occasionally. Or is it, well, here comes another new guy or a new gal. I wonder what they're going to try to make us do that we don't really want to do, or anything in between. Seventh, what do they believe about their potential and their goals? Do they believe they're doing all that they can, they're working as hard as they can to get by? Or do they believe we have untapped potential to be and do more? We just need to learn more. Help us learn more so we can be more and do more, or anything in between. What do they believe about teamwork? Is it all of us together against the competition, or is it backbiting and backstabbing in order to get what we need from whoever we need, or anything in between? Specifically, what do they believe about competition? Is it the culture of the NFL team in the preseason, when everyone is stabbing each other in the back to get the coach's attention so that they can make the team? Or is it the NFL team in the postseason, where everybody's pulling together to compete against the real competition, which is the guys on the other side, or anything in between? And finally, what do they believe about problem solving? Do they believe that they're capable of solving problems? Do they believe what you saw in the true story of the movie Apollo 13, where Gene Saracen, the program leader, told everybody that failure was not an option. We're going to stay here until we solve this problem and get these astronauts back to life, or back to Earth safely and alive, and dumps all of the spare parts on the conference table, and they figure out a way to use spare parts and duct tape to get everybody back safely? Is that what they believe about problem solving? Or do they believe, these problems are a normal part of our business, so we just live with them, we just go with them? These 10 key core beliefs are what are influencing your culture today. They are more important than at any time in your history. Like I said earlier, what your people believe about these 10 key areas determines whether you're stuck or whether you're moving forward, whether you're going down or whether you're going up, whether you're increasing or whether you're decreasing, whether folks are afraid and hiding or whether they're proactively looking for creative new ways to get back to work and do it safely and make it better. All of these are beliefs. Now, how do we find out, what they really believe? So we're going to offer you today, no strings attached, no hidden agendas. We're going to offer you today an opportunity to take advantage of an online, totally anonymous survey for up to 10 of your leaders to find out, at least with your leadership culture, what do your managers, what do your leaders really believe? If you have more and if you need more, that's going to cost you something. But for 10 leaders and the CEO or senior executive, we're offering you at no cost the opportunity to have your folks go online and answer 10 questions anonymously about what do they believe about these 10 key elements, these 10 key core beliefs. What do we really believe? What's really going on? This is going to take less than 10 minutes to complete, and it's going to include a detailed report based on your data and a consultation with one of our experts to help you understand what the data means and make recommendations to what can we do about it, how can we improve it. Not a slick sales pitch, but a legitimate gift contribution to the future success. We believe at CEO to CEO and at Excellent Cultures that if we do our part to make contributions to help create cultures that are robust and vibrant and love change and hate losing and love to win during this time and season, that we won't have to worry about our business in the future. It'll come back to us. So that's why we're making this contribution. So what we're going to ask you to do is to take advantage of this. Again, no cost, no strings attached, no follow-up marketing. Very simply, click on the link. www.excellentcultures.com/CEOMRI. We'll put it up again so you can remember it. For you and your leaders, up to 10, no cost, no strings attached. And that includes the detailed report along with the teleconference with specific recommendations based upon your data. In this time and this season, as a leader of an organization or a business of any kind, you need to know what your people really believe that's driving how they think, how they act, how they perform, how they communicate or don't communicate, how they work or how they don't work, how they function. So click on the link, give us a call, and then we'll take a few minutes to answer some of your questions that are more specific to what we've talked about today.